Welcome back to our second in this new series of cash flow podcasts that's focusing on founders who are ready to scale their businesses from high 7 to 8 figures or lower 8 to higher and higher 8 figures. You'll probably notice I have the same outfit on I had on last week. So yeah, we batch record. What of it? All right, now on to the real stuff. This episode is titled The $3 Million Job That Nobody Warned You About. And it may be where you're sitting right now if what I said last week resonates with you. And I just want to tell you about a founder I meet all the time, over and over and over again. Their revenue has crossed some threshold, some 7-figure threshold that's significant. Call it 5, 7, 8, or 9. The team's grown a little bit. The business really looks successful from the outside because they've grown. Maybe they're even in the Inc. 5000 where all you have to do is submit. And if you've grown a certain amount in revenue over a period of time, you're going to get listed. And then you can go buy their little Inc. 5000 digital thumbnail and pop it on your website. So it looks really successful from the outside, especially for folks who don't really know what the Inc. 5000 is all about. But it does look successful. But then often when I'm talking to them, I hear this next sentence and see if this resonates with you. I can't step away. If I'm not here, things fall apart. Period. Okay? And they usually say it and they're kind of half proud of it and half exhausted. It's like in the old days when I was in corporate and people talked about working 14-hour days and setting that example for everybody else in the organization. And they were proud as hell of it, but they were also exhausted and ready to fall apart, which is nothing to be proud of. All right. Working a long work day is nothing to be proud of. Believe me, I've gone through my share of them. I'm not proud of them. I still do them sometimes. I'm not proud of them. But in fact, I'm going to take an aside here. A boss once said to me, really good boss. I hated him for saying this, but I went into him after our team spent an entire weekend doing this massive project that needed fixing. And I went in and I said, hey, Steve, our team did this. We need to give them an award. And he said, no. You get an award from me when you do this during regular working hours, because that means you've truly fixed the problem. I was pissed off, but he was right. Okay, so it's the same thing here. I had to take that very difficult lesson when I was in my 30s and translate it into what happens with entrepreneurs. If you are worked to the bone, if your business can't run without you and you're trying to scale, don't be proud. Focus on the exhausted and let's fix it. That's what we want to do with this podcast. I know how you got here, right? Because I've been here, totally been here. And early on in the business, you are the only person there. You didn't have the option of not being everything. You were the operations, you were the systems, you were the decision maker, you were the check writer, you were the loan getter, you were the HR person. You didn't have a choice. It's only you when you're starting a business. So you had to do it. But when that led to success, you kept growing, and your brain learned this really weird lesson. That's a dangerous lesson. And it got reinforced day after day, maybe month after month, and maybe even for a couple of years, telling you, this is what it takes to run the business. This is what my work is. And it's a bad message that we need to work out of your muscle memory because it's a trap. Okay, what you've essentially done to the point of the title of this episode is you've created a $3 million job. So yeah, your revenue is $3 million. God knows how much is dripping down to the bottom line that you actually get to take home, and you're not getting any sleep. And you've got the pressure of now every decision you make isn't just affecting you, it's affecting potential a larger team. It's affecting your customers. It's affecting your vendors. And that stress builds and builds and builds. And it's insidious because you don't notice it day to day. But if you all of a sudden with me right now, just take a deep breath and relax your shoulders. If you realized how tense your shoulders were and you're scaling your business right now, that's a sign that you need to be listening to this podcast, because that's what happens in that mode. You don't even realize how tense you've gotten until you take a second to say, oh, I have to relax a hot minute. Because the bottom line is there's growth and there's maturity. And just like with kids, like you may have a 10-year-old that pops up to 6 feet tall. It happens sometime. That's growth. But they don't get the emotional maturity and the intellectual maturity until they actually age into it and start learning from their peers and from teachers who teach them different things. Well, it's the same thing here with your business. You have this gangly 10-year-old who really isn't mature enough to be out there as a growing and scaling business without killing you. And this is what my book, and I've got it here, might as well do some cheap PR, Founder to Exit, is all about. Very easy read. I should put it on audiobook, but it's a very easy read. And it addresses this very specific thing that early success is seductive and it's detrimental to your health. And it gets into your brain in a way that turns it into muscle memory, that when it's time to make the changes that you all of a sudden have realized you need to make, it's like unwinding the most in-depth habits that you've ever built in your life. It would be like learning to write left-handed all of a sudden after you've been writing right-handed your entire life. But if you're ready to scale your business, and if you've been doing all the work, and if it totally depends on you, it's time to learn how to write left-handed. And that's what I want to kind of address here. This is sort of an assessment episode for you to see if you fall into this category. It could be that what I've already said to you resonates. And if it does, then you can jump right to the end and get the little worksheet that I put at the end of it that might help you kind of sort through it. But I want to elaborate a little bit before I get there as well. So, let's set the stage. Your revenue's grown, your headcount's grown, your complexity's grown, your volume has grown, but the structure hasn't changed a bit. Things are still structured and operating the way they used to. So what happens is this thing called effort fills the gap. And there are a few problems with effort. One is, especially in the finance and accounting area, as it comes to taking care of your money, it can lead to error, okay? Because there's nothing structured. There are no double checks. It's often a lot of rework. So somebody puts something in wrong at the front end of a tube that has 5 things going off in 5 directions. Guess what? You got another team member down the line having to fix it in all 5 of those spots. Okay, and that's what we want to get you out of. So effort is what fills that gap between the growth spurt and the maturity level to actually be that tall. And this kind of happens at 7 or 8 figures. And you're not failing. The founder's not failing. You're actually succeeding, but you're succeeding in a way that's costing you your freedom. And what we really want to do is kind of swing that pendulum back so that you're still succeeding. You're still comfortable that all the right controls are in place, that everything's being done the way it needs to be done, but that you get your freedom back. And what I can say is it's the hardest thing you're going to ever have to do as a business owner is this transition. My daughter listens to Glennon Doyle's We Do Hard Things. And if you're going to be the guy or the gal that's ready to make this step, you need to be ready to do the hard things. There's really not one entrepreneur I've worked with, including myself, who's gone through this without having to do some really hard things. And not just hard things like letting go of control, but, hard things like firing Aunt Mary, who's your bookkeeper and really doesn't know how to keep books, or recognizing that the sales guy who got you where you are now isn't capable of talking to or dealing with the clients that you now have and are dealing with. Those emotional, the emotional pushback you're going to get from yourself when you have to deal with that is extremely tough. And one of the things that I do with my clients is help them navigate that because, it might be Aunt Mary doesn't need to be fired. She just needs to be redirected into doing something that's not going to cause harm as things move down the line for you. Or you may decide that Aunt Mary is somebody that you want to take care of. So you will use your proceeds from the business to help support her in some other way. But you're not going to leave her in a position where she can harm the business. So, this is the kind of thing I say, it doesn't mean you got to fire everybody. It means you have to think about the fact and really face the fact that some things need to change. And the people ones are actually the hardest, just as a heads up there. So how do you know if you're here or not yet, right? The way you know you're here is if the business still requires your presence day to day to be there. That if your presence were yanked out of there, it wouldn't be noticed. It'd be like pulling your hand out of a bucket of water. The business would still run. Now, you might be out there making the bucket bigger, which is your job, or making the water turn into lemonade or something like that, but you're not involved in those day-to-day operating businesses. See, up until now, you haven't built a business You've grown, you're the gangly 10-year-old, but it's a demanding job as a gangly 10-year-old. Now we want to help you build that structure that lets the rest come, which is the maturity. And a great analogy for this that seems to resonate with a lot of people I talk to is the bike versus the machine, right? So you think you've built a machine with this business, and if it only moves when you're pushing it and it's getting heavier and heavier because your team's getting bigger and bigger, you didn't really build a machine. You built a bicycle. And the bicycle works great as long as someone's pedaling it. And right now, that's you. So we need to get you to stop pedaling. But now, if you stop pedaling, everything slows down. It might even roll back down the hill. Real leadership, real business ownership, real ability to transform this thing into a scaled business is going to come when you recognize that it's not about pedaling harder. You're not pulling everything behind you. It's about designing something that moves along without you that you can control with a remote control. And if you want it to go a different direction, or you want it to change color, or you want it to do any of those other things, you can focus on those things. And the design or the ability to do this, and I go over this in the book, it starts in 3 places. And it's not going to surprise you. I'm sure you've heard this before from many consultants that you may have paid to help you here, that it just hasn't changed because you haven't changed. It's decisions, it's systems, and it's durability. Okay, now let me make those real. We're going to talk through those. Let's talk about decisions. You need to stop being the decision and start designing the decision. All right, you get the distinction. Most founders are still the decision. Everything's got to funnel through them. And you know this as well as I do. If you clog a pipe and you're the only thing that can let things get past and out of the pipe, you're either going to have a heart attack because there's no more room for blood to flow, or it's just going to dribble out a piece at a time, and you're going to have to work harder and harder and harder to make that little hole bigger, right? So let's take an example. What's an example? If there's an exception to how we price something, it has to come to you. If you need to hire somebody, you have to interview the person. If a customer's calling you because they're not happy with the service, you're the only one that can handle de-escalating it and making the problem fixed. That's not leadership, okay? That's traffic control. That's the job as opposed to the business leader. So designing decisions instead of actually deciding them means that instead of approving the discounts or evaluating every hire or de-escalating every problem, you are designing a system that very clearly says when discounts are allowed, how much they can be, and who can approve them. Very simple. And instead of weighing in on every hire, you're making sure that they're following the right process to create the job description and the marketing for that job and the environment and the culture that you want to hire somebody into, and you give them the budget range as well, but they are the decision maker at that point because they're operating inside the boundaries that you've set. And here's the big question, and it always happens. What if they get it wrong? Guess what? They will. They're going to make mistakes doing this thing for the first time, the very same way you made mistakes doing this the first time. They have a backstop. You didn't. You are a backstop for them in this learning mode. And the sooner you give them the responsibility and the sooner you let go of the ownership and push the accountability down to them, the sooner you're going to be able to walk away because they won't be making those mistakes. But they are going to make mistakes. Accept it, and accept it as a positive thing, because then you'll fix the design instead of stepping in. And that's the big trap. You got to watch out for that. The first time somebody makes a mistake, you got to let them make it. And then you got to figure out, where did the design fail? Not, oh shit, see, told you, self-fulfilling prophecy. Nothing works without me in it. That's a line of bullshit. You know it as well as I do. So now you want to focus on just fixing the design so it doesn't happen again. That's how a grown-up business learns and grows and scales. That's how you get the maturity that matches the 6-foot-tall 10-year-old. Okay? So what's the second piece? The second piece is building systems instead of you being the glue that's holding it all together. And I often equate this to playing whack-a-mole. You're the one sitting there with the hammer waiting for things to pop up and whacking them, and they're coming up so fast you can't keep up, even with hammers in both hands and both feet. All right? So if someone leaves your business and chaos follows it, it wasn't a people problem. Hey, I'm going to tell you that it was a missing system. There's absolutely nothing that should be in place in your business that relies entirely on a human person. And this isn't being inhuman or saying that you don't, treat your employees well, saying that you shouldn't be responsible for helping them grow in the organization into what they want to be and all of that. But it is saying, hey, there should have been a system here so that when that one person chose to leave, maybe for good, like maybe it was a good thing for them, you can cheer them on instead of the business falling apart. In the book, I talk about it like the founders being the glue. And if you get pulled out, if you're the one pulled out of the system, everything crashes because you're the only one that know how the cash moves. You're the only one who knows which customers you have to be a little delicate with. You're the only one who knows what good really looks like because it hasn't really been put together in a system. And what I'll tell you is that's not strength, that's incredible fragility. Okay, your business is fragile right now if that's where you're sitting. And it's not too tough of a change here, except that the word system just scares people off. I hear it all the time. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want systems. I don't want to be blocked in. This is one of the things that makes the magic between me as a CFO and any one of my clients is that I understand that. We need a system, and I will insist on it. I will fight for you to understand that. But we also need a system that can be fluid enough to move with the ebb and flow of the owner and the speed that you're running and all the things that have to be done. So, yes, there are people who will come in with brilliant system models and try and slap it on top of your business, and it'll be rigid and you'll hate it. But you can put systems in place. I'm here to tell you, the book's here to tell you. You can put systems in place that work for you and your personality and your style and the culture that you're trying to build. Okay? So just to kind of circle around on this, if the answer does, if you could ask the question, how does something work? And your answer is still, it depends. It's time to look at that as your next system. I'm going to say that again because it's a really good point. If there's anything about your business that if I said to you, hey, how does this work? That you'd go, well, it kind of depends. Then it needs a system. Okay. And I'm finding that out now myself because with one of my clients, I'm training a new accountant who's come in, is going to take a lot of the workload that we were covering. And every time I find myself saying, when they ask a question, I go, well, it depends on blah, blah. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Let's put a system in place for that. It shouldn't depend. It's not that hard. You're brilliant. You've built an awesome model, but I will tell you the same thing I've told myself. You're not that brilliant that it has to come out of your head every single time and that you're the only one who can understand and manage exceptions. You are the only one who can put a system in place that can manage those exceptions. So that's what we really want to do to get you past that fragility. The thing about that long, lanky 10-year-old is his bones are really fragile still at this point. So right now your bones may still be fragile in the business as you're growing, but the answer to every question about how does it work is it depends. So that's the second thing. The third thing is durability, right? So we've got the whole, just to kind of circle back with where we are here, we've talked about decisions, we've talked about systems, and now we're going to talk about durability. And what does that mean? And it's basically instead of being the hero, I looked back at my own business for a long time, and I used to, I don't know how to put this in a way that's, I don't mean it in a bragging way. I mean, in a very honest way. I used to go in and play the hero with my clients. So I'd go in and I'd fix everything for them and they'd be so grateful. And I took a, failing cash flow model and helped them build a positive cash flow model. And it's a hero syndrome, guys. So you need to build a system that's durable and doesn't require you to be the hero and save it. And it's hard truth, and it's the hardest thing to do because those heroics feel valuable, right? You saved the deal, you fixed the mess, you worked on the weekend and handled the thing, just like I did when Steve told me, nah, this will really mean something. You can do it without being a hero, is essentially what he said, right? So durability means that the business can do what? Three things. It can absorb mistakes, it can survive an absence, not just of you, but of anybody, quite frankly, and it can function without being rescued. Okay, think about that. You don't want the me that was 5 years ago that was going in as a hero to rescue it. You want a system that absorbs its own mistakes, learns from them, fixes the systems and structures so that it doesn't happen again, that survives anybody's absence, be it for illness, be it because they got a better opportunity, be it because you want to take a freaking vacation, and you want it to be able to function without having to be rescued. If it still needs saving, it's not because you're great, it's because the structure's missing, the durability is missing. So I want to give you something that you can work with here. And there's a question that really, really changes, that will highlight for you what's going on. And it sounds trite, and you've probably even said it before, but I don't think you, no, I can't say that I don't think you have. If you have sat down to really think about it, then you're an exception to the rule. And the question is, if I disappeared for 2 weeks, truly disappeared, what would break? Okay, and the reason this question is important is, in my business, if I'm going to create a lifestyle business and it would shut down because I was gone, that's fine. I'm creating a lifestyle business. I'm not trying to scale it. But if you're going from 7 to 8 figures, or 10 million to 40 million figures in revenue, not 40 million figures, that will be a really big number. If you're going from 10 million to 40 million over the next couple of years, if you're one of those companies that truly is in the Inc. 500, right, because of how fast you've grown, ask yourself this question and sit down for a minute and really think about it. If I disappeared for 2 weeks, truly disappeared, didn't check Slack, didn't check email, didn't call in, 2 weeks fully away, what would break? Not what would feel uncomfortable, not what would maybe you think you could be done better, because those are all things you can learn from and make better. But what would physically break? Those things, whatever that list is what we'll call a design failure. And it's something that needs to be fixed so that you can grow, because design failures are fixable. But you need to sit there and think about it. I'm not saying you have to go away for the 2 weeks, although that would really bring it home for you. Number one, you'd learn a little bit more about how the business probably doesn't need you as much as you think. But number two, you would see what actually breaks. And then you'd be able to know, okay, look, those are the design things that need to be fixed. So don't physically do it if you don't want to, but at least go through the exercise kind of honestly. What would break if you weren't there? And then that's where we start. So what's the first real shift we have to go through now? We know you've grown. You're the gangly 10-year-old. What really has to happen? Your next phase isn't about growing more right now. It's about subtraction. It's about letting maturity catch up with the growth. And it means 3 things. Designing your decisions. I'm just kind of a wrap up here. Design your decisions instead of being the decision. Build systems instead of being the glue. And create durability instead of performing heroics. So if you're making all the decisions, you're feeling like you're the glue, and you're performing heroics, it's the one thing that moves you from being a founder to becoming an owner, is to stop doing all of that. Okay? And it's a decision you have to make. And to be fair, there is no wrong decision. You may decide, I don't want to do that. I want this lifestyle business where I'm in the middle of everything. Clearly the route I've chosen. But if you don't want that, if you want to scale, if you want to have something valuable at the end of this that's a major asset in your portfolio, then it's time to stop being that founder and start becoming an owner. And to help you, I have a worksheet for you. So I put it, it's called the Founder Removal Exercise. And we put this together because it goes along very nicely with this chapter in the book and also with this podcast. And I'm going to say this because the insight that you're going to get from listening to this podcast isn't going to actually change anything, okay? Actually doing the work, the execution is going to change things. And you know how to execute because you've done it for years. It's how you got here. But now you got to execute on some things that are different. So I challenge you to use this worksheet this week, and I'll explain it in a minute. And then Francis will drop the link into it down in the podcast notes. But we're also going to follow it up next week. So I really encourage you to do it, because we're going to talk about the one thing that founders cling to the hardest at this stage and how to deal with it. In other words, it's control is what we're going to dive into a little more depth next episode. Control feels safe right up until it becomes the problem. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about next week. In the meantime, here's what your worksheet is. It's printable. You can fill it in. You print it out and fill it in. You can answer it in a recording. You can just spend some time with it, and, for half an hour to really think about it. But what it does is it's going to force you to see where you are still the system. It's going to separate your issues into whether they're decision issues, system issues, or durability issues. And it's going to convert your interruptions, because I know you're interrupted 100 times a day, into design projects. What are the things that we need to address? And it's going to help you prevent that I'm just going to keep doing it this way behavior. It's going to really start to change that muscle memory for you if you take the time to really execute it. So I want you to download this. I want you to use it for 10 days. Don't fix anything yet. Just use this worksheet to find out where the problems are. Because if you go in just trying to fix things, pick a system and go after it, you're going to pick the wrong one. But if you finish this exercise first and you spend 7 to 10 days on it, you're going to find that you're going to start attacking the right things in the right order. And just really tell the truth to yourself about where you're still in the middle of all this muck. And one thing I can promise you, actually 3 things I can promise you. 1, this is going to create discomfort. 2, right now that discomfort is your job if you really want to scale. And 3, it's going to surface some patterns and some things about yourself that are going to evidence how awesome a founder you are and how much you need to change if you want to become a business owner of a scaling business. Okay. And then next week, we're going to attack the one thing that's probably going to come up the most for you in this exercise, which is control. All right. So be sure and download this, please. And I'll ask you one other thing. If you know other founders who are getting ready to scale their businesses from 7 to 8 figures, this is what we do. This is what I've done now for 8 years and really understand exactly what folks need to go through. So I'm talking through it here in this series this season so that you can come in and really start to, number 1, get the tools to use. Number 2, plug my book, because it's never bad to plug a book. But number 3, to help people get through this process that is so hard, that really is the kind of what got you here won't get you there version of things. So I've enjoyed covering this with you. I hope it's been useful. I hope you print this worksheet and really go to work on it. And then next week, we're going to be right back here where we are talking about control, which is the next big issue. You guys have a great week. Get in that uncomfortable zone, and I'll see you next week.